I still remember the exact moment I realized my marriage was a lie. It wasn't some dramatic scene you'd see in movies. No lipstick on a collar, no mysterious text messages lighting up his phone at midnight. It was quieter than that. More insidious. It was the way Marcus looked at me across the dinner table on our 6th anniversary, his eyes glazed over with boredom, like I was part of the furniture he'd grown tired of rearranging. My name is Adrienne Walsh, and 6 years ago, I married a man I thought I knew. I was 31 then, running my own commercial real estate firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, pulling in deals that made my competitors whisper my name with equal parts respect and envy. Marcus Hayes was a freelance marketing consultant when we met, charming, ambitious, always talking about the next big thing he was working on. He had this energy that made you believe anything was possible. He made me believe I could have it all, the career, the marriage, the life I'd worked myself half to death to build. But here's the thing about charm, it's just another word for disguise. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with everything, you know exactly how I felt that night. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you've got a story like mine, or if you just want to hear how this all plays out, and trust me, you do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and check the description box below for more stories like this. Because what happened next changed everything. That anniversary dinner was at Luca's, this upscale Italian place downtown where the pasta costs more than most people's car payments. Marcus had insisted on going there, said he wanted to celebrate us. I should have known something was off when he ordered the most expensive bottle of wine without even glancing at the price. He never did that. Marcus was always careful with money, or at least, with his own money. "You look tired, Addie," he said, twirling his fork through his linguine. Not "you look beautiful," not "I'm so proud of you." Just tired. "I closed the Henderson deal today," I said, trying to inject some life into the conversation. 7.2 million. It's the biggest one I've landed this year. He nodded, barely looking up. That's great. That's great. 2 words. No congratulations, no excitement, no acknowledgement that I just pulled off something most people in my industry spend their entire careers chasing. I watched him take another sip of that expensive wine, watched the way his jaw tightened slightly when the waiter brought the check, and something inside me went cold. I paid. I always paid. We drove home in silence, the kind that feels heavier than any argument. Our house, my house, technically, since I bought it 3 years before we got married, sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Dilworth, all pristine white siding and black shutters, the kind of place that screams success. I'd worked 70-hour weeks for 2 years straight to afford the down payment. I'd sacrificed weekends, holidays, relationships with friends who eventually stopped calling because I was never available. And Marcus. Marcus had moved right in, hung his vintage concert posters on my walls, and made himself comfortable. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe beside me, and I felt like a stranger in my own bed. Something was wrong. I didn't have proof yet, didn't have anything concrete, but I had this gnawing feeling in my gut, the kind that wakes you up at 3 in the morning and won't let you go back to sleep. So I did something I'd never done before. Something I'd always judged other women for doing, told myself I'd never stoop to. I waited until Marcus was deep in sleep, his face slack and peaceful like he didn't have a care in the world, and I picked up his phone from the nightstand. No passcode. He'd stopped using one about a year ago, said he trusted me completely. I should have seen that for the red flag it was. People who have nothing to hide don't need to announce their trustworthiness like it's a badge they're wearing. I opened his messages, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. At first, there was nothing. Just work stuff, messages to his brother about a fantasy football league, a few texts to his college buddy about getting together for drinks. Normal. Boring. Innocent. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize. V. Simmons. The messages started 3 months ago. 3 entire months of communication I knew nothing about. Asterisk asterisk V. Simmons asterisk 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 can't stop thinking about last night. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk Marcus asterisk 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 same. This is getting harder. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk V Simmons asterisk 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 when are you going to tell her? Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk Marcus asterisk 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 soon. I promise. Just need to time it right. Asterisk. I scrolled back, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. There were dozens of messages. Hundreds. Maybe. Plans to meet up at hotels I'd never heard of. Complaints about me, about how I was always working, how I was cold and distant, how I didn't understand him anymore. Pictures. God, the pictures. Nothing explicit, but enough. Her hand on his chest. His arm around her waist. Smiles that should have been mine. The room started spinning. I set the phone down carefully, like it was made of glass, and walked to the bathroom on legs that didn't feel like my own. I stared at myself in the mirror, at my face that suddenly looked 10 years older, at the designer pajamas I bought because Marcus once mentioned he liked silk, at the wedding ring on my finger that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I didn't cry. That's what surprised me most. I thought I'd break down, thought I'd scream or throw up or collapse on the cold tile floor. But instead, I just felt empty. Hollow. Like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me human, leaving behind nothing but a shell. When I came back to bed, Marcus was still sleeping. Peaceful. Untroubled. And I lay down next to him, staring at the ceiling, and I started planning. Because here's what I learned in that moment, lying in the dark next to a man who'd been lying to me for months, there are two ways to handle betrayal. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it sharpen you into something harder, something smarter, something that can't be hurt the same way twice. I chose the second option. The next morning, I woke up before Marcus and went through my usual routine like nothing had changed. I made coffee, checked my emails, got dressed in one of my power suits, navy blue, tailored to perfection, the kind that makes you feel like you could buy and sell the entire room. When Marcus finally stumbled downstairs, rubbing sleep from his eyes, I kissed him on the cheek and asked him about his day. Got a client meeting at 10, he said, pouring himself coffee from the pot I'd made. Might run late. No problem, I said, my voice steady and sweet. I'll probably be working late too. He nodded, already scrolling through his phone, probably texting her, probably telling V. Simmons how he'd successfully fooled his stupid, workaholic wife once again. But I wasn't stupid. Not anymore. I spent that entire day at my office, but I wasn't closing deals. I was making calls, to my attorney, Patricia Lundgren, a shark in Amani who'd built her reputation on making unfaithful spouses regret every decision they'd ever made. To my financial advisor, Jonathan Park, who'd helped me structure my assets in ways that would make them very difficult to touch. To a private investigator named Dale Hutchinson, whose website promised discretion, evidence, and results. I need to know everything, I told Dale when we met at a coffee shop in South Park, far enough from my usual haunts that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Where he goes, who he sees, how long it's been happening. I need it documented, time-stamped, and irrefutable. Dale, a former cop with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much, nodded slowly. Most people come to me hoping I'll prove them wrong, he said. You already know you're right, don't you? Yes, I said. But I need you to prove it in a way that holds up in court. He took my retainer check, $5,000 I paid in cash, and promised me results within 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, closed deals, attended client dinners, all while maintaining the perfect image of a successful, happily married woman. I came home to Marcus every night, cooked dinners I could barely taste, sat beside him on the couch while he scrolled through his phone, probably texting her right in front of me. And I smiled. God, I smiled so much my face hurt. On the 13th day, Dale called me. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said. I was in my car, parked in the lot behind my office building. I'm sitting. It's worse than you think. Worse. How could it possibly be worse than my husband having an affair? Dale told me. And as he talked, laying out everything he discovered, I felt that hollow space inside me fill up with something new. Not sadness. Not even anger. Something colder. Something calculating. Because Marcus wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to take everything I'd worked for. Dale Hutchinson sent me the full report via encrypted email at 11:43 that night. I was in my home office, the room Marcus never entered because he said the sight of all my boring paperwork gave him a headache, with the door locked and a glass of whiskey I wasn't drinking sitting untouched on my desk. I opened the file. The first page was a timeline. Dates, locations, photographic evidence. Marcus and V. Simmons, Vanessa Simmons, I learned, a 34-year-old lifestyle influencer with 60,000 Instagram followers and an apartment in Plaza Midwood that she definitely couldn't afford on her own, had been seeing each other for 7 months. 7. Not 3, like the text messages suggested. They'd just been smart enough to switch to a different messaging app after a while. They met at hotel bars. They took weekend trips to Asheville, to Charleston, to Atlanta, trips that happened to coincide with my biggest client presentations, when I was too busy to notice Marcus was gone. In one photo, they were holding hands in front of a waterfall. In another, she was wearing a necklace I recognized, not because Marcus had given it to me, but because I'd seen the charge on our joint credit card 3 months ago. $375 at a boutique jewelry store downtown. When I'd asked him about it, he'd said it was a gift for his mother's birthday. His mother's birthday was in February. This charge was in June. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. Vanessa was pretty in that Instagram way, perfectly contoured makeup, hair that looked effortlessly tousled but probably took an hour to style, body clearly maintained through personal training sessions and careful dieting. She was everything I wasn't. Available. Attentive. Uncomplicated by ambition or 80-hour work weeks. But the affair wasn't the worst part. The worst part started on page 12. Dale had managed to access, through means I didn't ask about and didn't want to know, some of Marcus's email correspondence with a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney. Graham Westfield, one of the most aggressive divorce lawyers in Charlotte, known for bleeding his client spouses dry. The emails went back 4 months. 4 months ago, Marcus had started planning our divorce. And according to his correspondence with Westfield, he wasn't planning to just walk away. He was planning to take half of everything I owned. My business. My house. My investment accounts. My retirement funds. Everything I'd built before I ever met him, everything I'd sacrificed for, everything that had my fingerprints and blood and sleepless nights embedded in it, he thought he was entitled to half. North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally, but fairly. The problem was, Marcus and his attorney were planning to argue that my business had grown significantly during our marriage, which technically made that growth marital property. They were going to claim that Marcus had contributed to my success by providing emotional support and managing the household, which was laughable, since our housekeeper, Rosa, did more household management in a week than Marcus had done in 6 years. But the real kicker was in an email dated 3 weeks ago. *** Marcus to Westfield ****. She's got a prenup, but I did some research. We never got it notarized. Just signed it in front of her attorney and my buddy who's a real estate agent. Does that hold up? ***** Westfield to Marcus ****. Possibly not. North Carolina doesn't require notarization for prenups, but without it, we could challenge validity based on lack of proper witnessing requirements. If we can prove the witness wasn't genuinely impartial, and a real estate agent who'd later benefit from your goodwill certainly isn't impartial, we might get it thrown out entirely. Then everything's on the table. I read that exchange 4 times, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Our prenup. The one I'd insisted on before we got married. The one Marcus had signed with a smile and a joke about how he didn't need my money anyway. The one that should have protected everything I'd brought into the marriage and kept my business completely separate from marital assets. He was planning to invalidate it. And if he succeeded, if he actually managed to get that prenup thrown out, he could walk away with millions. Millions of dollars I'd earned. Millions of dollars that represented every sacrifice I'd ever made, every opportunity I'd seized, every risk I'd taken while he'd been. What? What had Marcus actually contributed? I pulled up our joint bank account on my computer. Over the last 6 years, I'd deposited over $1 million into that account. My salary, my bonuses, profits from property deals. Marcus's deposits totaled $83,000. Total. Over 6 years. That was less than I made in a single good quarter. I'd paid for his car. I'd paid for his student loans from the MBA program he'd attended before we met and never actually used. I'd paid for the vacation to Europe he'd insisted we take for our 4th anniversary. I'd paid for everything, and he'd let me, all while planning to claim he was entitled to half of it because he'd supported my career. My hands were shaking again. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Responsible people were asleep at this hour. Faithful spouses were in bed with their partners, not plotting financial devastation. I thought about confronting him. I played out the scene in my head, marching into our bedroom, throwing the evidence in his face, watching him scramble for excuses. I imagined the satisfaction of seeing his mask slip, of watching him realize he'd been caught. But that satisfaction would last maybe 5 minutes. And then what? He'd lawyer up immediately. He'd hide assets, delete communications, maybe even try to manipulate the narrative so I looked like the unreasonable one. He'd have time to prepare, to strategize, to get his ducks in a row. No. I needed to be smarter than that. I sat back down at my desk and opened a new document. I started writing down everything I knew, everything I needed to do. I needed to protect my assets before filing for divorce. I needed to document every financial contribution I'd made to the marriage. I needed to gather evidence of his affair that would hold up in court. North Carolina is one of the few states where you can still sue for alienation of affection, and I was absolutely planning to make both Marcus and Vanessa pay for that. But most importantly, I needed to deal with that prenup. I called Patricia Lundgren first thing the next morning. She answered on the second ring, sounding annoyingly alert for 7:30 a.m. Adrienne, tell me you're calling about a new commercial deal and not what I think you're calling about. I need to know about prenuptial agreements, I said. Specifically, what makes them invalid? There was a long pause. Oh, honey. Don't oh honey me, Patricia. Just tell me. She sighed. Come to my office. 2 o'clock. And bring your copy of the prenup. I spent the morning at work, going through the motions of a client meeting I'd scheduled weeks ago. The clients, a couple looking to invest in a mixed-use development downtown, kept talking about ROI and market projections, and I nodded and smiled and said all the right things, but inside my head, I was miles away. At 1:55, I walked into Patricia's office. She'd been my attorney for 8 years, had handled every major deal I'd ever closed, and had warned me about Marcus from the beginning. He's charming, she'd said the first time she met him, at a firm holiday party. But charm is usually just manipulation wearing a nicer suit. I should have listened. Patricia was in her late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations. She gestured for me to sit and held out her hand. I gave her my copy of the prenup, 6 pages that I'd kept in my safe deposit box at the bank. She read it slowly, carefully, her expression giving away nothing. Finally, she looked up. This is solid, she said. Well-drafted, clear language, everything you'd want in a prenup. But your husband's right, it's not notarized. My stomach dropped. Does that matter? In North Carolina, it shouldn't. State law doesn't require notarization. But, she held up a hand when I started to relax. But without a notary, challenges are easier. Your witness was Jake Brennan. He's a real estate agent. Friend of Marcus's. Patricia's expression darkened. Not a lawyer, not a notary, and not an impartial third party. That's a problem, Adrienne. A good attorney could argue this wasn't properly witnessed, which could raise questions about whether both parties fully understood what they were signing. I'm a real estate professional, I said, my voice rising. I sign contracts every single day. There's no question I understood what I was signing. I know that, and you know that. But a judge might be persuaded otherwise if Marcus's attorney is good enough. And Graham Westfield is very good. I felt the room tilt slightly. So what do I do? Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me. How did you find out about this? I told her. Everything. The text messages, the private investigator, the emails, the plan to invalidate the prenup and take half of everything. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Actually smiled. What? I demanded. You said he's been planning this for 4 months. At least. And he's been emailing his attorney about strategy, about how to challenge the prenup, about what he thinks is entitled to. Yes. Why? Patricia's smile widened. Because, my dear, your husband just made a spectacular mistake. I don't understand. Those emails are dated. Time-stamped. They show clear premeditation and planning. They show that he's been strategizing about how to take your assets while still living in your house, using your money, pretending to be a loving husband. And in North Carolina, when you file for divorce, the date of separation matters enormously. It determines what is and isn't marital property, what income is considered separate versus joint. She leaned forward, and I saw something fierce in her eyes. Something that reminded me why I'd hired her in the first place. If we can prove he's been planning this divorce for months while actively deceiving you about the state of your marriage, while having an affair, while living off your income and plotting to take your assets. Adrienne, we won't just protect your prenup. We'll destroy him. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope flicker in my chest. Tell me what to do, I said. And Patricia did. The next 3 weeks were the best acting performance of my life. Every morning, I woke up beside Marcus, kissed him goodbye, and told him to have a good day. Every evening, I came home and asked about his client meetings. The ones I now knew were often covers for afternoon hotel visits with Vanessa. Every night, I lay beside him in bed and pretended to sleep while my mind raced through everything Patricia had told me to do. But behind the scenes, I was building a fortress. Patricia had given me a detailed plan, and I followed it like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. First, I started documenting everything. I kept a detailed log of every expense, every deposit, every financial transaction over the course of our marriage. I gathered 6 years of bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns. I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 different locations: Patricia's office, my safe deposit box, and an encrypted cloud drive Marcus didn't know about. I photographed every piece of jewelry I owned, every valuable in our house, every item that might suddenly disappear once Marcus realized I was onto him. I catalogued my art collection, nothing crazy expensive, but I'd invested in several local artists whose work had appreciated nicely. I documented the furniture I'd bought before our marriage, the electronics, the kitchen appliances I'd replaced last year when Marcus had complained the old ones looked cheap. Everything. I documented everything. Dale Hutchinson continued his surveillance. Every few days, I'd get a new report with fresh evidence. Marcus and Vanessa at a wine bar in Noda. Marcus and Vanessa browsing in an art gallery that Saturday he told me he was helping his brother move. Marcus and Vanessa checking into the Ritz-Carlton for a 3-hour visit on a Wednesday afternoon. Each new report felt like a small knife to the chest, but I'd learned to compartmentalize. I'd put those feelings in a box, locked them away for later, and focused on what mattered, building an airtight case. If you've ever had to pretend everything was fine while your world was falling apart, leave a comment below. Tell me how you survived it. Because some days, I really wasn't sure I would. And if you're watching this because you're going through something similar, stay tuned, because what I'm about to tell you next could save you millions. Hit that subscribe button and check the description box below for more stories like this, because you're not going to want to miss what happened next. The hardest part wasn't the evidence gathering. It was the waiting. Patricia had been very clear. I couldn't file for divorce yet. I needed Marcus to think everything was normal for as long as possible. The longer he believed he was getting away with his plan, the more evidence he'd create, the more comfortable he'd get, the more likely he was to make mistakes. Cheaters get cocky, Patricia had said. They think they're smarter than they are. Let him get cocky. So I waited. And I smiled. And I played the role of the oblivious wife to perfection. But I also started making strategic moves. The first thing I did was separate my business finances completely from anything Marcus could touch. I'd always kept my company accounts separate, but there were some gray areas. Profit distributions that had gone into our joint account, for example. I restructured everything through my business attorney, making sure every single dollar I earned from my company went into accounts that had only my name on them. I also started shifting assets. Nothing obvious. I didn't want to trigger any alarms, but I moved money from our joint savings into a separate business investment account. I told Marcus I was investing in a new development project, which wasn't entirely a lie. I just didn't mention that the project was structured in a way that made the investment completely separate property. I met with Jonathan Park, my financial advisor, and we went through my entire portfolio. I want everything protected, I told him. I want to know exactly what's mine, what's ours, and what he could possibly claim. Jonathan, who'd been managing my money since before I'd met Marcus, understood immediately. You're planning for divorce. I'm planning for war. He nodded slowly. Smart. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next 2 weeks, Jonathan helped me restructure my retirement accounts, document the separate property nature of my premarital investments, and create a clear paper trail showing exactly how my wealth had grown. The numbers were striking. When I'd met Marcus, my net worth was about $800,000. Now it was pushing $4 million. Of that growth, I could prove that approximately $3.6 million had come from my business dealings, my investment decisions, my work. Marcus's financial contribution to our marriage over 6 years totaled less than $90,000. These numbers would matter in court. But Patricia had told me something else, something that became my secret weapon. In North Carolina, you can sue for alienation of affection. It's one of only a handful of states that still allows it. If you can prove that Vanessa deliberately interfered in your marriage, if you can show that she knew Marcus was married and pursued him anyway, you can go after her financially. I'd never even heard of alienation of affection lawsuits before. The idea seemed almost archaic, something from a different era. But Patricia assured me they were real, they were legal, and they were effective. We've won settlements of $50,000, $100,000, sometimes more, she'd said. It's not about the money, it's about making them both pay. It's about sending a message. So Dale started gathering evidence about Vanessa too. Turned out she knew exactly what she was doing. Her Instagram was full of inspirational quotes about living your truth and choosing happiness, but her private messages, which Dale obtained through methods I still don't fully understand and probably don't want to, told a different story. She'd told her friends Marcus was married. She joked about how his wife was a workaholic who doesn't appreciate him. She'd sent messages about how Marcus was going to leave her soon and how she and Marcus were planning their future together. Planning their future. With my money. I was in my office when Dale sent me those messages, and I had to close my door and take several deep breaths to keep from screaming. The sheer audacity of it. The entitlement. This woman, who'd never built anything in her life besides a social media following based on posting pictures of her brunch, thought she was going to step into my life and enjoy everything I'd worked for. Not if I had anything to say about it. As the weeks passed, Marcus started getting more careless. He stopped making excuses for where he'd been. He'd come home late smelling like perfume that wasn't mine and wouldn't even bother to shower before bed. He'd leave his phone face up on the kitchen counter, messages from V popping up right in front of me. One night, I watched a message appear while Marcus was in the bathroom. Asterisk can't wait for this to be over so we can finally be together for real. Asterisk. I stared at that message, my hands gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went white. I wanted to smash his phone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march upstairs and confront him right then and there. Instead, I took a photo of the message with my own phone and sent it to Dale. Evidence received, he texted back. This guy's making it easy for us. 2 weeks later, Patricia called me into her office again. We're ready, she said. We have everything we need. The question is, when do you want to do this? I'd been thinking about that. About timing. About impact. I want him served at the house, I said. I want him to be blindsided exactly the way he was planning to blindside me. Patricia smiled. I can arrange that. But there's something else you should consider. What? Graham Westfield, Marcus's attorney, is going to advise Marcus to go aggressive. To file first if he can, to control the narrative. We have evidence he's been planning this for months, but we don't know his exact timeline. If he beats us to the courthouse, even by a day, it could affect how the judge views the case. I felt my chest tighten. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need to file soon. This week, if possible. And we need to do it in a way that gives us every possible advantage. Tell me. Patricia pulled out a file folder. I've drafted everything. Petition for divorce, financial affidavits, custody arrangements for any shared assets. We don't have kids, I interrupted. I know. But you do have a dog. I'd almost forgotten about Cooper, our 3-year-old golden retriever. I'd bought him as a puppy, paid for all his vet bills, training, everything. Marcus liked to play with him when he was in a good mood but had never once taken him to the vet or remembered to buy dog food. I want Cooper, I said. You'll get Cooper. But listen, Adrienne, there's something else I need to prepare you for. The way she said it made my stomach drop. What? When we file, we're going to include everything. The affair, the evidence of his planning, the alienation of affection claim against Vanessa, all of it. And we're going to file a motion to invalidate any claims he might make on your prenup based on the timing of his emails to Graham Westfield. Okay. So Marcus is going to lose his mind. He's going to feel cornered. And cornered people do unpredictable things. You need to be prepared for him to lash out. I thought about that. About Marcus's charm, his easy smile, the way he could make you believe anything he wanted you to believe. But underneath that charm, what was there? I realized I didn't actually know. After 6 years of marriage, I didn't know what my husband was capable of when he was desperate. I can handle it, I said, with more confidence than I felt. I hope so, Patricia said. Because once we do this, there's no going back. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. Let's do it. That night, I went home and everything looked the same as it always did. Marcus was on the couch, watching a basketball game, beer in hand. He glanced up when I came in. Hey, babe. You eat yet? Grabbed something at the office. Cool. This game is crazy. Down to the wire. I stood there in the doorway, watching him watch TV, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. How had I ever loved this man? How had I ever believed he loved me back? But I knew the answer. I'd loved who I thought he was. And he'd loved what I could give him. I went upstairs, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat at my desk in the office. I opened my laptop and read through the divorce petition Patricia had sent me one more time. Every detail was there. Every piece of evidence, every claim, every demand. Tomorrow morning, I would sign it. Tomorrow afternoon, Marcus would be served. And tomorrow night, my old life would be over. I should have felt scared, anxious, uncertain about what came next. Instead, I felt free. The process server arrived at our house at 2:15 on a Thursday afternoon. I'd made sure I wasn't home. Patricia had advised me to be somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses, somewhere Marcus couldn't find me immediately after he received the papers. So I was at a client meeting in Uptown, discussing a potential retail development project with a couple who'd been saving for 20 years to open their own restaurant. They were so excited, so hopeful, talking about their dream of building something that would last for generations. I smiled and nodded and took notes, and tried not to look at my phone every 30 seconds. At 2:47, my phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, papers served. He accepted them. Going to send you the confirmation. My hand was shaking as I typed back, "Thank you." The couple across from me didn't notice. They were too busy showing me pictures of the type of restaurant they wanted to create. Rustic Italian, family style, the kind of place where everyone feels like they're coming home. "This is beautiful," I told them, and I meant it. In that moment, watching these two people who clearly loved each other plan their future together, I felt the full weight of what I'd lost. Not Marcus. I wasn't mourning Marcus. I was mourning the idea of partnership I'd thought we had. The idea that someone could stand beside you and build something together, instead of just taking what you'd built and claiming it as their own. The meeting ended at 4. I drove home slowly, deliberately, taking the long way through neighborhoods I'd sold properties in over the years. I needed time to prepare myself, to steady my breathing, to remember why I was doing this. Marcus's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. The lights were on inside. I sat in my car for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel, before I finally forced myself to go inside. He was waiting in the kitchen. I could tell immediately that something in him had shifted. The easy charm was gone, replaced by something harder, uglier. He was standing by the counter, the divorce papers spread out in front of him, and when he looked up at me, his eyes were cold. "What the hell is this?" His voice was level, but I could hear the rage underneath. "Exactly what it looks like. You're divorcing me." "Yes." He laughed. Actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You can't be serious. Because of what? You think I'm having an affair?" I set my purse down carefully on the side table, kept my voice calm. "I don't think you're having an affair, Marcus. I know you are. I have evidence. Months of it." His expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw panic cross his face before he locked it down. "That's ridiculous. Whatever you think you know. I know you've been seeing Vanessa Simmons for 7 months. I know you've been planning this divorce for at least 4 months. I know you've been working with Graham Westfield to try to invalidate our prenup so you can take half of everything I own. I know about the emails, Marcus. All of them." The color drained from his face. How did you? Does it matter? The point is, I know. And now it's over." He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched him cycle through emotions: shock, anger, fear, calculation. I could see him trying to figure out his next move, trying to regain control of a situation that had already slipped completely out of his hands. "Addie, listen." His voice shifted, became softer, more pleading. The charm was back, or at least he was trying to resurrect it. "Whatever you think you know, whatever someone told you, it's not what it looks like. Vanessa is just a friend. We've been working on a business project together. Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't insult me by lying to my face right now. I have photos, Marcus. Text messages. Hotel records. I have everything." His jaw tightened. The mask slipped again. "So what? You hired a private investigator. You've been spying on me. Protecting myself. There's a difference. This is insane." He grabbed the papers off the counter, waving them at me. "You're claiming I committed adultery? You're suing Vanessa for, what even is this, alienation of affection? You're trying to claim I get nothing in the divorce." "You won't get nothing," I said calmly. "You'll get whatever the judge deems fair. Which, given that you contributed less than $90,000 over 6 years to a marriage where I was bringing in over $1 million annually, probably won't be much." "I contributed more than money." His voice was rising now. "I supported you. I was there for you. You were there for my bank account. That's not fair." "You know what's not fair, Marcus? Planning to divorce your wife while pretending everything is fine. Sleeping with another woman while sleeping in my bed. Using my money to buy her jewelry. Working with an attorney to try to take half of a business you had nothing to do with building. That's not fair." He slammed the papers down on the counter. You know what? Fine. You want a divorce? You'll get a divorce. But you're not getting away with this. You think you're so smart, so much better than everyone else. But you're cold, Adrienne. You always have been. You care more about your business than you ever cared about me, about us. I stayed with you for 6 years trying to make this work, and you barely noticed I existed unless you needed someone to stand next to you at your business functions. Every word was designed to hurt, to make me doubt myself, to shift the blame onto me. A year ago, it might have worked. A year ago, I might have absorbed those words and wondered if he was right, if I had been too focused on work, too absent, too cold. But I wasn't that woman anymore. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. I do care about my business. I care about it because I built it from nothing. Every client, every deal, every success, that was me. And you know what I learned, building that business? I learned that you don't waste time on investments that aren't giving you returns. You cut your losses and move on. His face went red. So that's what I am. A bad investment. You're a liar and a cheat. And in about 3 months, you're going to be my ex-husband. We'll see about that. He grabbed his phone off the counter. I'm calling Graham. This is bullshit. That prenup isn't worth the paper it's printed on, and you know it. Call him. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear from you, especially when he finds out everything you've done is now part of the court record. Marcus stormed toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You're going to regret this. You think you're the only one with evidence? You think I don't have things I can use against you? Like what? He didn't answer. Just stared at me with pure hatred in his eyes before walking out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I stood there in the empty kitchen, my heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Then I pulled out my phone and called Patricia. He's been served, I said when she answered. How did he take it? About as well as expected. He threatened me. Said he has evidence against me, though I have no idea what he's talking about. He's bluffing. That's what they do when they're cornered. Did he threaten you physically? No. Just, generally. Okay. I want you to document this conversation. Write down everything he said, word for word while it's still fresh. And Adrienne? I want you to consider staying somewhere else for a few nights. Just until things cool down. This is my house. I know. But… Patricia, I bought this house 3 years before I met him. Every mortgage payment has come from my account. I'm not leaving. She sighed. All right. But keep your doors locked and your phone close. If he comes back and things escalate, you call the police immediately. Understood. Understood. After we hung up, I did exactly what she said. I went through the house and made sure every door, every window was locked. Then I sat down and wrote out everything Marcus had said, every detail I could remember. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Asterisk, you're a bitch. You know that. Marcus told me everything. You were a terrible wife and now you're trying to ruin both of our lives. Hope you're happy being alone. Asterisk. Vanessa. It had to be. I blocked the number and went back to my documentation. Over the next few days, more texts came from different numbers. Some from Vanessa, some I suspected were from Marcus using burner phones or friends' phones. They ranged from angry to pleading to threatening. I blocked them all and forwarded every single one to Patricia and Dale. This is good, Patricia said when I sent her the latest batch. Shows harassment, shows they're both panicking. Keep blocking, keep documenting, don't respond to anything. I won't. Good. Because we have a court date. Preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days to prepare for the moment when I'd have to sit in a courtroom and air out every ugly detail of my failed marriage in front of a judge and whoever else decided to show up. During those 2 weeks, I threw myself into work even harder than usual. I closed 2 major deals, started negotiations on a third, and barely slept. Every time I lay down, I'd see Marcus's face, hear his voice telling me I was cold and distant and deserved to be alone. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been too focused on work. Maybe I hadn't paid enough attention to my marriage. But then I'd remember the hotel records, the text messages, the emails to his divorce attorney. I'd remember that while I was working 70-hour weeks, he'd been planning my financial destruction and sleeping with another woman. And I'd remember that I was done apologizing for being successful. The preliminary hearing was on a Friday morning. I wore my best suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, with my favorite heels that made me feel like I could conquer anything. Patricia met me at the courthouse at 8:30. "You ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." "Remember, stay calm, don't engage with Marcus or his attorney, let me do the talking. The judge just needs to hear the basic facts today. The real battle comes later." We walked into the courtroom together. Marcus was already there with Graham Westfield, who looked exactly like I'd imagined. Slick, expensive suit, shark's eyes. Marcus wouldn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched, his hands folded on the table in front of him. Vanessa was there too, sitting in the back row. She glared at me when I walked in, and I met her eyes for just a second before looking away. She wasn't worth my energy. The judge entered, Honorable Diane Kerrigan, a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense in her courtroom. I'd done my research on her. She presided over several high-profile divorces in Charlotte and was known for being fair but firm. "All right," Judge Kerrigan said, settling into her seat. "Let's get started. This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of Walsh versus Hayes. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mrs. Walsh, you're petitioning for divorce on grounds of adultery, correct?" Patricia stood. "That's correct, Your Honor. We have substantial evidence of Mr. Hayes's affair with Ms. Vanessa Simmons, evidence that spans at least 7 months. We're also filing a claim for alienation of affection against Ms. Simmons." Graham Westfield rose. "Your Honor, my client denies these allegations. Mrs. Walsh has provided no concrete evidence of adultery, only circumstantial information gathered through what we believe was illegal surveillance." "Nothing illegal about it," Patricia shot back. "The investigator followed standard procedures. Everything was obtained legally and ethically." "We'll be challenging that," Westfield said. Judge Kerrigan held up a hand. "Save it for the actual hearing. Right now, I'm just establishing the basic facts. Mr. Hayes, are you contesting the divorce?" Marcus stood. For the first time since I'd entered the room, he looked at me. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm contesting Mrs. Walsh's characterization of our marriage and her claims about marital property. We had a prenuptial agreement that she's trying to enforce, but that agreement was improperly executed and should be considered invalid. We'll address the prenup at the full hearing," the judge said. "For now, I'm ordering both parties to maintain the status quo regarding all assets. No major purchases, no transfers of property, no depleting of accounts. You'll both submit complete financial disclosures within 30 days. Full hearing is scheduled for..." She checked her calendar. 8 weeks from today. That gives both sides time to complete discovery. 8 weeks. 2 months of living in this limbo. The judge dismissed us, and I followed Patricia out of the courtroom. Behind us, I could hear Marcus and Graham talking in low, urgent voices. I didn't look back. "That went about as expected," Patricia said once we were in the hallway. "Nothing surprising. Now we prepare for the real thing." "Patricia, what if is right? About the prenup?" She stopped walking and turned to face me. "Listen to me. Yes, the prenup has some issues. Yes, a good attorney could potentially challenge it. But we have something better than a perfect prenup. We have evidence of his intent to defraud you. We have proof he's been planning this divorce while actively deceiving you and living off your income. We have documentation of every financial contribution you've made. A judge isn't going to reward that kind of behavior. You sound confident. I am confident. Trust me. I wanted to trust her. But as I walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to go wrong. That somehow, despite all my planning and evidence and preparation, Marcus was going to find a way to win. I had no idea then just how right I was, but not in the way I expected. The 8 weeks between the preliminary hearing and the actual divorce proceedings were the longest of my life. Discovery, I learned, is the legal term for the process where both sides have to hand over every piece of relevant information about their finances, their assets, their entire lives. It's invasive and exhausting and exactly as terrible as it sounds. Patricia submitted our initial discovery requests, every bank statement Marcus had ever had, every credit card bill, every tax return, every document related to any money he'd ever touched. We requested communications between him and Vanessa, between him and Graham Westfield, between him and anyone else who might have information about his affair or his plans. Graham Westfield, predictably, requested the same from me. I spent hours in Patricia's office, going through 6 years of financial records. Every business expense, every client dinner, every transaction got scrutinized and categorized. My entire financial life laid bare in spreadsheets and bank statements. This is humiliating, I said one afternoon, watching Patricia's paralegal photocopy yet another stack of documents. It's necessary, Patricia replied. And trust me, Marcus is going through the same thing. Probably worse, actually, since he has a lot more to hide. She was right about that. When Marcus's financial disclosures started coming in, there were some interesting discoveries. For one thing, he'd been spending way more than I'd realized. The joint credit card bills showed charges I'd never paid attention to before, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, charges from hotels when I'd been out of town, jewelry purchases that had never resulted in me receiving any jewelry. But there was something else. Something that made Patricia sit up straighter when she saw it. Look at this, she said, spreading out 3 months of credit card statements. June, July, August of last year. These charges here, do these mean anything to you? I looked at where she was pointing. Several charges from a law firm in Charlotte. Not Graham Westfield's firm, a different one. No, I said slowly. I've never heard of Hammond and Associates. Neither have I, which is weird because I know pretty much every family law attorney in this city. Patricia pulled out her phone and did a quick search. Her eyes widened. Oh, this is interesting. Hammond and Associates isn't a family law firm. They specialize in business law. Specifically, they handle incorporations and LLC formations. My stomach dropped. Why would Marcus need a business attorney? Excellent question. Patricia filed an immediate motion to compel Marcus to disclose any business entities he'd created. Graham Westfield fought it, claimed it wasn't relevant to the divorce, but Judge Kerrigan sided with us. 2 weeks later, we got our answer. Marcus had created an LLC 8 months ago. Walsh Hayes Consulting, LLC. The business was registered in his name only, with a business address at a UPS store in South Charlotte. He's been planning this, Patricia said, studying the documents. Look at the timing. He created this company right around the time he started planning the divorce. He's been moving money. What money? He doesn't have any money. That's what we need to find out. Dale Hutchinson earned every penny of his retainer fee over the next 2 weeks. He tracked down Walsh Hayes Consulting's bank account. It had exactly $1,200 in it. But the account activity told a more interesting story. Marcus had been invoicing my company. I stared at the bank statements Dale had obtained, my hands shaking with rage. Over the past 8 months, Marcus had sent invoices to Walsh Property Development, my company, for consulting services. 10 invoices total, ranging from $500 to $2,000 each. Total amount, $11,400. And my bookkeeper, who handled hundreds of invoices every month, had paid them without questioning them because the name Walsh was on them and she'd assumed they were legitimate business expenses. He was stealing from me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He was invoicing my own company and I was paying him for services he never provided. Technically, it's fraud, Patricia said. And it's incredibly stupid on his part, because now we have documentary evidence that he was actively deceiving you and taking money under false pretenses while living in your house and planning to divorce you. Can we get that money back? We can certainly try. More importantly, we can use this to show the judge exactly what kind of person Marcus is. But Marcus wasn't done being stupid. 3 weeks before the trial, Dale called me with an urgent message. "You need to see this," he said. "I'm sending you a link. Don't open it at work." I was in my car, parked outside a client meeting. I opened the link he sent. It was Vanessa's Instagram page. She'd posted a photo 2 hours earlier, a picture of her hand wearing a diamond ring. The caption read, *when you know, you know. Ring #engaged #new beginnings #love wins *. I zoomed in on the photo. The ring was gaudy, at least 2 carats, surrounded by smaller diamonds. It looked expensive. Very expensive. I called Patricia immediately. "He proposed to her," I said. "Marcus proposed to Vanessa. Before our divorce is even final." "You're kidding." "I'm looking at the Instagram post right now." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Wow. This is monumentally stupid. In North Carolina, if you're still legally married, getting engaged to someone else is just more evidence of adultery. It shows intent to marry, which undermines any claim he might make that the affair was just a mistake or wasn't serious. "There's something else," I said. "That ring." "Patricia, there's no way Marcus could afford a ring like that." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need to find out where he got the money for it." We filed another discovery request. Graham Westfield tried to block it, but Judge Kerrigan was losing patience with Marcus's attorney. She ordered him to disclose any significant purchases made in the last 6 months. The answer came back 10 days before the trial. Marcus had taken out a personal loan for $15,000, using his car as collateral. "He went into debt to buy an engagement ring for his mistress," Patricia said, and I could hear the glee in her voice. "While he's claiming he needs your money to survive." "Adrienne, this case is getting better by the day." But Marcus had one more surprise in store. 1 week before trial, Graham Westfield filed a last-minute motion. Marcus was claiming I had been emotionally abusive throughout our marriage, that I had controlled all the finances and isolated him from his friends and family, that I had forced him to sign the prenup under duress. I read the filing in Patricia's office, my hands shaking with rage. "This is insane," I said. "I never isolated him from anyone. He saw his friends all the time, when he wasn't with Vanessa, apparently. And I never forced him to sign anything. He wanted the prenup explained to him, I had my attorney walk him through it, and he signed it voluntarily." "I know. And we can prove all of this. But Adrienne, I need to prepare you for what's about to happen." "What do you mean?" Patricia leaned forward, her expression serious. "Marcus is going to try to make you look like the villain. He's going to paint himself as the victim of a controlling, cold, career-obsessed woman who cared more about money than her marriage. He's going to say that Vanessa showed him the love and attention you never did. And a good portion of the public, and possibly even the judge, might be sympathetic to that narrative, at least initially. But it's not true. Truth doesn't always matter. Perception does. So we need to be ready. We need character witnesses who can testify that you're not this person he's claiming you are. We need to show that you tried to make the marriage work, that you were a good wife, that his affair wasn't your fault." Over the next week, Patricia and I built our witness list. My business partner, Monica Chen, who'd known me for 12 years and had seen me with Marcus at company events. My friend Sarah Brennan, who'd been to our house dozens of times and had watched me try to include Marcus in every aspect of my life. Even Rosa, our housekeeper, who could testify about the reality of our day-to-day life and who actually did what around the house. Marcus, according to Discovery, was bringing his brother, his college roommate, and Vanessa's best friend to testify for him. If this whole thing sounds exhausting to you, imagine living through it. If you're watching this because you're going through a divorce, or because you've been where I was, comment below and tell me your story. You're not alone. And make sure you subscribe and check the description box below, because what happens at the actual trial, you're not going to believe it. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, in the guest room now, because I couldn't stand to sleep in the bed I'd shared with Marcus, and stared at the ceiling, running through everything that could go wrong. What if the judge threw out the prenup? What if Marcus's abuse claims gained traction? What if I lost everything I'd worked for? At 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs. Cooper followed me, his tail wagging sleepily. I sat on the kitchen floor and hugged him, burying my face in his soft golden fur. "It's going to be okay," I whispered to him. "One way or another, it's going to be okay." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But as I sat there in the dark kitchen of the house I'd bought with my own money, holding the dog I'd raised from a puppy, facing the possibility of losing half of everything I'd built, I wasn't sure I believed anything anymore. The only thing I knew for certain was that tomorrow, one way or another, this would end. I just had to hope I'd still be standing when it did. The courtroom was packed. I hadn't expected that. Divorce trials aren't usually spectator events. But word had apparently gotten around about the alienation of affection claim, about the money involved, about the drama. People I didn't know filled the gallery seats, court watchers, law students, people who apparently had nothing better to do on a Tuesday morning than watch two strangers destroy each other in public. Vanessa was there, front row, wearing a tight black dress that seemed wildly inappropriate for a courtroom. She stared at me with undisguised hatred. I looked right through her. Marcus sat at his table with Graham Westfield, wearing a suit I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his pen, his knee bouncing under the table. Good. He should be nervous. Judge Kerrigan entered, and we all stood. She looked out over the packed courtroom with a slight frown. "This is a divorce proceeding, not entertainment," she said sharply. "If anyone creates a disturbance, you'll be removed immediately. Is that clear?" The room went silent. "All right. Let's begin. Mr. Westfield, you're representing the respondent. Ms. Lundgren, you're representing the petitioner. I've reviewed all the pre-trial motions, all the evidence submitted, all the discovery materials. I'm ready to hear opening statements. Ms. Lundgren, you may proceed." Patricia stood, and I watched her transform into the lawyer who'd built her reputation on destroying opponents in court. She was calm, confident, and absolutely lethal. "Your Honor, this case is about deception on a massive scale. Mrs. Walsh came into this marriage as a successful businesswoman with significant assets. She had the foresight to protect those assets with a prenuptial agreement. For 6 years, she supported her husband financially, professionally, and emotionally while building one of the most successful commercial real estate firms in Charlotte. In return, her husband betrayed her trust, conducted a 7-month affair with Ms. Vanessa Simmons, deliberately planned to invalidate their prenuptial agreement to access assets he had no right to, and even created a fraudulent consulting company to steal money directly from his wife's business. We will prove all of this with documentary evidence, witness testimony, and Mr. Hayes's own words. By the end of this trial, Your Honor, it will be clear that Mr. Hayes is entitled to nothing except whatever consequences come from his own choices." She sat down. Marcus's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. Graham Westfield stood. He was smooth, practiced, and I could see why Marcus had hired him. "Your Honor, what we have here is a classic case of a successful woman who was too busy building her empire to notice her marriage falling apart. Mrs. Walsh earned significant income. We're not disputing that. But she also worked 70, 80, sometimes 90 hours a week, leaving Mr. Hayes alone, isolated, and starving for basic human connection. Yes, he made mistakes. Yes, he became involved with another woman. But that involvement came after years of emotional neglect, after years of being treated like an accessory to his wife's success rather than a partner. As for the prenuptial agreement, we will show that it was signed under pressure, without proper legal representation for Mr. Hayes, and with witnesses who were not impartial. Mr. Hayes contributed to this marriage in ways that can't be measured in dollar signs, and he deserves to share in the marital assets that grew during their partnership. I felt my blood pressure rising with every word. Emotional neglect. Like I was the one who'd betrayed our vows. Like I was the one who'd lied and cheated and planned financial devastation. All right, Judge Kerrigan said. Ms. Lundgren, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Mrs. Adrienne Walsh to the stand. My legs felt shaky as I walked to the witness stand. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then I sat, folded my hands in my lap, and tried to project a confidence I didn't entirely feel. Patricia approached. Mrs. Walsh, can you tell the court about your professional background? I took a breath. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a degree in business administration. I worked for a commercial real estate firm for 3 years after graduation, then started my own company when I was 27. That was 11 years ago. My firm specializes in commercial property development and investment, retail spaces, office buildings, mixed-use developments. And your business has been successful? Yes. Very successful. Can you quantify that success for the court? My firm had gross revenues of $8.3 million last year. My personal income was $1.2 million. I heard someone in the gallery whisper something. Judge Kerrigan shot them a look and they went silent. Now, Mrs. Walsh, when did you meet Marcus Hayes? 7 years ago. At a mutual friend's party. What was your financial situation at that time? I had a net worth of approximately $800,000. I owned a condo in Dilworth, had a successful business, and was financially independent. And Mr. Hayes's financial situation? He was working as a freelance marketing consultant. I don't know his exact income at the time, but he mentioned he was working to pay off student loans. Did you date for long before getting married? About a year. And whose idea was the prenuptial agreement? Mine. I'd worked hard to build my assets and I wanted to protect them. Marcus said he understood. Did he object to signing it? No. He said he didn't care about my money, that he loved me for me. My voice cracked slightly on that last part. Even after everything, those words still hurt. Patricia guided me through the rest of my testimony. The early years of our marriage. How I'd included Marcus in my business events, introduced him to my clients, tried to make him feel like part of my world. How I'd paid for almost everything, the house upgrade, his car, vacations, daily expenses. Mrs. Walsh, did you know your husband was having an affair? Not until 6 months ago. I found text messages on his phone. And what did you do when you discovered this? I hired an attorney and a private investigator. I wanted to know the full extent of what was happening. Did you confront your husband immediately? No. My attorney advised me to gather evidence first. And you found evidence of more than just an affair, correct? Yes. I found evidence that Marcus had been planning to divorce me for months. That he'd been working with an attorney to try to invalidate our prenup. That he created a fake consulting company and had been billing my firm for services he never provided. That he'd taken out a loan to buy an engagement ring for his mistress before our divorce was even filed. The room erupted in whispers. Judge Kerrigan banged her gavel. Order! I will have order in this courtroom. Graham Westfield stood. Your Honor, this is inflammatory and prejudicial. It's facts, Your Honor, Patricia said calmly. All documented and submitted as evidence. I'll allow it, Judge Kerrigan said. Continue. Patricia walked me through every piece of evidence. The hotel receipts. The text messages. The emails to Graham Westfield. The fraudulent invoices. I answered every question clearly, calmly, keeping my emotions locked down tight. Finally, Patricia said, no further questions, Your Honor. Graham Westfield stood for cross-examination. I braced myself. Mrs. Walsh, you testified that you worked 70 to 90 hours a week. Is that correct? Sometimes, yes. How many hours was Mr. Hayes working? I don't know exactly. But less than you. Probably. So he was home alone quite a bit. He was home when I was working, yes. And during those 6 years of marriage, how many family dinners did you have together per week, on average? I hesitated. It varied. Give me your best estimate. Maybe 2 or 3. 2 or 3 dinners a week. Out of 21 possible meals. That's less than 15% of meals shared with your husband. I was building a business. Yes, you've made that very clear. You were building a business. But were you building a marriage? Objection, Patricia said. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Kerrigan said. But the damage was done. I could see what Westfield was doing, painting me as the cold career woman who'd neglected her husband. He continued. Mrs. Walsh, did your husband ever express feeling lonely? Sometimes. Did he ask you to spend more time at home? Occasionally. And did you? I tried. But I had responsibilities. To your business? Yes. Did those responsibilities ever include midnight calls? Working weekends? Sometimes, yes. Did they include cancelling plans with your husband? I felt my chest tighten. A few times. A few times. Mrs. Walsh, according to your calendar, which you provided in discovery, you cancelled or rescheduled personal plans with Mr. Hayes 17 times in the last year alone. Does that sound like a few times to you? I didn't answer. Mrs. Walsh, isn't it true that you prioritized your career over your marriage at every opportunity? That's not fair. Isn't it true that when your husband tried to talk to you about feeling disconnected, you told him you were too busy for drama? I froze. That conversation. I'd forgotten about it. It was 8 months ago, right after I'd closed a huge deal, and Marcus had tried to have some kind of state of the relationship talk. I'd been exhausted and stressed, and I'd said something dismissive. I was tired that day. So you admit you said it. I may have said something like that, but... No further questions. I walked back to my seat feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Patricia leaned over. You did fine, she whispered. He's trying to rattle you. Don't let him. But I was rattled. Because part of what Westfield had said was true. I had worked constantly. I had cancelled plans. I had been so focused on my career that I'd sometimes treated Marcus like an afterthought. Did that excuse what he'd done? Absolutely not. But it made me wonder if I'd missed warning signs. If I'd been so busy winning in business that I'd lost in my personal life without even noticing. Judge Kerrigan glanced at the clock. We'll break for lunch. Back at 1:30. I barely tasted the sandwich Patricia ordered for us. I kept replaying Westfield's cross-examination in my head, analyzing every answer, every hesitation. Stop, Patricia said. You're spiraling. He asked those questions to make you look bad, but the facts are still on our side. Marcus cheated. Marcus stole from you. Marcus planned to defraud you. Nothing about your work schedule changes that. But what if the judge thinks? The judge is a professional. She's been doing this for 30 years. She knows when an attorney is manipulating emotions versus presenting facts. Trust me. I wanted to trust her. I really did. At 1:30, we filed back into the courtroom. Patricia called our next witness, Dale Hutchinson, the private investigator. Dale was perfect on the stand, professional, detailed, unflappable. He walked the judge through his entire investigation. The surveillance photos. The hotel records. The documented timeline of Marcus's affair. Graham Westfield tried to rattle him on cross-examination, suggested the investigation was invasive or unethical, but Dale shut him down with calm professionalism. I followed standard procedures for surveillance in a domestic investigation, Dale said. Everything was done legally and ethically. I photographed Mr. Hayes and Ms. Simmons in public places. I obtained hotel records through proper channels. Nothing I did violated any laws or Mr. Hayes's privacy rights. No further questions, Westfield said, sounding frustrated. Next, Patricia called Monica Chen, my business partner. Monica had known me since before I'd started my company. She'd watched me build everything from nothing. How would you describe Adrian's relationship with her husband? Patricia asked. She adored him, Monica said. At least in the beginning. She brought him to every company event, introduced him to all our clients. She talked about him constantly. She seemed really happy. Did that change over time? The last couple years. I noticed she didn't talk about him as much. She seemed stressed. But she never said anything negative about him. Just that they were both busy. Did you ever witness Mr. Hayes supporting his wife's career? Monica hesitated. Not really. He came to events, but he always seemed bored. Like he was there because he had to be, not because he wanted to be. Graham Westfield didn't even cross-examine Monica. Probably smart. Anything he asked would just give her more opportunities to make Marcus look unsupportive. The afternoon wore on. Witness after witness. Sarah Brennan, my friend, who testified about the effort I'd put into the marriage. Jonathan Park, my financial advisor, who walked through my financial contributions versus Marcus's. Rosa, the housekeeper, who testified about who actually maintained the household. Spoiler, it was her and me, not Marcus. By 4:30, I was exhausted. Judge Kerrigan looked equally tired. We'll adjourn for today, she said. Tomorrow morning, Mr. Westfield, you'll present your case. 9 a.m. sharp. I gathered my things and followed Patricia out of the courtroom. Behind us, I heard Marcus and Graham talking in urgent whispers. I didn't look back. You did great today, Patricia said as we walked to her car. We established everything we needed to establish. Tomorrow, Marcus has to try to defend the indefensible. It's not going to go well for him. What if he's convincing? What if his witnesses make me look like a terrible wife? Then we'll discredit them on cross-examination. Adrian, you need to trust me. We have facts, evidence, documentation. He has excuses and emotional manipulation. Facts win. I wanted to believe her. But as I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the anxiety sitting in my chest like a stone. Tomorrow, Marcus would tell his version of the story. And even though I knew it would be filled with lies and half-truths and convenient omissions, part of me was terrified that people would believe him. That the judge would believe him. That somehow, despite everything, he'd find a way to win. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Marcus on the witness stand, spinning his narrative, making himself the victim. I imagined the judge's face softening, buying into his story of the lonely, neglected husband who'd only been seeking the love his wife refused to give him. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went for a run. Cooper ran beside me through the empty streets of my neighborhood, his tail wagging, completely unbothered by the fact that my entire life was about to be decided by a judge who'd never met me until yesterday. If only I could be more like my dog. By 8:30, I was back in the courtroom, sitting beside Patricia, watching the gallery fill up again. Even more people today. Word must have really gotten around. Vanessa was there again, same front row seat, wearing another inappropriate dress. This one was red. Bold choice for someone being sued for alienation of affection. Marcus looked different today. More confident. He'd clearly gotten some coaching from Graham Westfield about his demeanor. He sat up straighter, made eye contact with the judge when she entered, looked like a man who believed he was about to win. That confidence made my stomach turn. Mr. Westfield, Judge Kerrigan said, settling into her seat. Call your first witness. The defense calls Marcus Hayes to the stand. Marcus walked to the witness stand with his head held high. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. I wondered if the oath meant anything to a man who'd been lying for years. Graham Westfield approached him with the kind of gentle, sympathetic demeanor you'd use with a wounded puppy. Mr. Hayes, thank you for being here. I know this is difficult. It is, Marcus said, his voice carefully modulated to sound wounded but brave. But I want to tell my side of the story. Let's start at the beginning. When did you meet Adrienne Walsh? 7 years ago. At a friend's party. She was magnetic, successful, beautiful, confident. I was drawn to her immediately. I almost rolled my eyes. He was laying it on thick. And you began a relationship? Yes. It moved quickly. She was very direct about what she wanted. She wanted to get married, wanted to settle down. I was happy to give her that. Already rewriting history. I'd been the one hesitant about rushing into marriage. Marcus had been the one pushing for it. Now, Mr. Hayes, before you got married, there was a prenuptial agreement. Can you tell us about that? Marcus's expression shifted, became more troubled. Adrienne insisted on it. She said it was to protect her business, that it was just standard practice for someone in her position. But honestly, it hurt. It felt like she was planning for our marriage to fail before it even started. Did you want to sign it? No. But she made it clear that if I didn't sign it, we wouldn't get married. And I loved her. So I signed it. Did you have your own attorney review it? She said I could, but I didn't have the money for a lawyer. I was still paying off student loans. She knew that. Patricia leaned over and whispered to me. His lying. Discovery showed he had $18,000 in savings when you got married. I nodded, making a note. Graham continued. Now, let's talk about the marriage itself. What were the early years like? Good, at first. We were happy. But pretty quickly, I realized that Adrienne's business came first. Always. She worked constantly. Weekends, evenings, holidays. I'd try to plan dates or trips, and she'd cancel at the last minute because of work. I'd try to talk to her about it, and she'd tell me I was being needy or dramatic. That stung because it wasn't entirely false. I had said something like that once, during a particularly stressful week when he'd been complaining about my schedule. How did that make you feel? Alone. Like I was just there. Like I was an accessory to her life, not a partner. I tried to be supportive. I went to her business events. I smiled and played the role of the dutiful husband, but inside I was dying. Oh, please. He'd gone to business events for the free food and the chance to network for his non-existent consulting business. Did you try to address these feelings with your wife? Many times. She'd promised to cut back on work, to spend more time together. But it never happened. She'd always have another deal, another client, another crisis. I came in last, every single time. And at what point did you meet Ms. Simmons? Marcus's expression became almost dreamy. About 7 months ago. I was at a coffee shop, working on my laptop, and she sat down at the next table. We started talking. Just casually, at first. But she listened to me. She cared about what I had to say. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. I watched several people in the gallery nod sympathetically. My hands clenched into fists under the table. When did the relationship become romantic? Not right away. We were friends for a while. But eventually, yes, it became more. And I know that was wrong. I know I should have ended my marriage first. But I was so starved for affection, for connection, that I made a mistake. A mistake. Like he'd accidentally tripped and fallen into a 7-month affair. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Walsh has accused you of planning to invalidate the prenuptial agreement to access her assets. Is that true?
No.
I mean, yes, I consulted with an attorney about the prenup, but only because I believed it was signed under duress. I never wanted her money. I just wanted what was fair, what I'd contributed to the marriage. And what did you contribute? Emotional support. Household management. I was the one who made our house a home. I was the one who tried to maintain relationships with friends and family while she worked. I was the one who sacrificed my own career ambitions to support hers. I actually laughed out loud at that one. I couldn't help it. The sound echoed in the quiet courtroom, and everyone turned to look at me. Judge Kerrigan frowned. Mrs. Walsh, please control yourself. I'm sorry, Your Honor, I said, not sounding sorry at all. Patricia squeezed my arm in warning. Graham Westfield continued, walking Marcus through his narrative. The lonely husband, the neglectful wife, the affair born of desperation rather than malice, the consulting business he created to try to build some financial independence. Every answer was carefully crafted to paint him as the victim. Finally, Graham said, no further questions. Patricia stood, and I saw Marcus's confidence waver slightly. He knew what was coming. Mr. Hayes, Patricia began, her voice deceptively pleasant. You testified that you didn't want your wife's money. Is that correct? That's correct. And yet, you consulted with Mr. Westfield about how to invalidate a prenuptial agreement that would protect your wife's assets. Correct. I was exploring my options. Exploring your options for what, exactly? If you didn't want her money. Marcus shifted in his seat. I wanted to make sure I got what I deserved. What you deserved. I see. And how much did you think you deserved? I don't know. Whatever the court deemed fair. Patricia pulled out a document. This is an email you sent to Mr. Westfield on March 15th of this year. Would you like me to read it aloud, or would you prefer to summarize it for the court? Marcus went pale. I don't remember that email. Let me refresh your memory. You wrote, and I quote, if we can get the prenup thrown out, I should be entitled to at least half of everything, right? That's probably $2 million or more. Enough to start over with V and never have to work again. Does that sound familiar? The courtroom erupted. Judge Kerrigan banged her gavel. Marcus's face had gone from pale to bright red. That was taken out of context. What context would make that statement acceptable, Mr. Hayes? You just testified that you didn't want your wife's money, but here you are, calculating exactly how much you could take and planning to live off it. Which statement is the lie? I was angry when I wrote that. I didn't mean it. You were angry in March, but you sent similar emails in February, April, and May. Were you angry all those times too? Marcus didn't answer. Patricia wasn't done. Let's talk about your consulting business. Walsh Hayes Consulting. When did you create that company? Last year sometime. October 15th, to be exact. Do you know what else happened in October? I don't. That's when you started planning this divorce. Your first email to Mr. Westfield was October 23rd. 8 days after you created your consulting company. Quite a coincidence, don't you think? It wasn't. And this consulting company, what services did it provide? Marketing consultation. Business development advice. To whom? Various clients. Name one. Name a single client besides your wife's company. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. I was just starting out. So you had 0 clients except for the company owned by the wife you were planning to divorce. And you invoiced that company 11 times over 8 months for services you never actually provided. Is that correct? I did provide services. I gave Adrienne advice. I helped her think through strategies. When? When did you provide these services? Because according to your wife's testimony, you barely talked about her business. You found it boring. You never attended client meetings, never reviewed proposals, never participated in any actual business activities. So when, exactly, did you provide $11,000 worth of consulting services? Marcus was sweating now. In conversations. Informally. Informal conversations worth $2,000 each. I see. Patricia picked up another document. This is your bank statement from Walsh Hayes Consulting. You received $11,400 in payments from your wife's company. But you only have $1,200 left in the account. Where did the rest go? Business expenses. What business expenses? You had no office, no employees, no clients. Where did $9,000 go in 8 months? Marcus's jaw clenched. Personal expenses. Such as? I don't remember every purchase. Let me help you. On June 3rd, you spent $375 at a jewelry store. What did you buy? I don't recall. Patricia held up a photo, the Instagram post of Vanessa wearing the necklace. This necklace. You bought this for Ms. Simmons using money you fraudulently invoiced from your wife's company. Correct. The room went silent. Mr. Hayes. Yes. So you stole money from your wife and used it to buy gifts for your mistress. And then you had the audacity to come into this courtroom and claim you didn't want your wife's money. Is that accurate? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. No further questions. Marcus practically fled the witness stand. His face was red, his hands were shaking, and he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes as he returned to his seat. Judge Kerrigan looked at Graham Westfield. Your next witness. The defense calls Vanessa Simmons. This was going to be interesting. Vanessa strutted to the witness stand like she was walking a runway. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth with a voice that dripped with false sincerity. Graham Westfield approached her with the same gentle manner he'd used with Marcus. Ms. Simmons, thank you for being here. I know this must be uncomfortable. It is, she said, shooting a glare at me. But I want to tell the truth about what really happened. How did you meet Mr. Hayes? At a coffee shop. We started talking and just connected. I didn't know he was married at first. Patricia and I both sat up straighter. That was a blatant lie. Dale's evidence showed she'd known from day one. When did you find out he was married? After we'd been talking for a few weeks. He told me he was married but that his wife didn't love him, that she cared more about money than their relationship. I felt sorry for him. So sorry that you slept with him. Sure. And your relationship became romantic. Eventually. I tried to resist it. I knew it was wrong. But Marcus was so unhappy, and I fell in love with him. Several people in the gallery made sympathetic sounds. I wanted to scream. Ms. Simmons, Mrs. Walsh is suing you for alienation of affection. She claims you deliberately interfered in her marriage. How do you respond to that? It's ridiculous. I didn't break up their marriage. Their marriage was already broken. Marcus came to me because his wife had already pushed him away. All I did was show him the love and support she refused to give him. Graham smiled. No further questions. Patricia stood, and I saw Vanessa's confident expression falter. Ms. Simmons, you testified that you didn't know Mr. Hayes was married when you met him. Is that correct? Yes. And when did you find out? A few weeks later. Interesting. Because we have text messages between you and your friend Kayla Monroe dated the same day you met Mr. Hayes. Would you like me to read them? Vanessa's eyes widened. What messages? Patricia read from her phone. Met a cute guy at the coffee shop today. Total silver fox. He's married but says his wife is a workaholic bitch who doesn't appreciate him. Think I might have some fun with this one. She looked up. That was sent at 3:47 p.m. on the day you met. So you did know he was married from the beginning, didn't you? I don't remember. Did you send that text, yes or no? Yes, but... And you had multiple conversations with friends about how you were pursuing a married man, didn't you? About how you were going to steal him away from his wife. Isn't that correct? That was just girl talk. I didn't actually. You posted on Instagram about your new man 2 months before Mr. Hayes even separated from his wife. You called him the one. You made plans for your future together while he was still living in Mrs. Walsh's house, sleeping in her bed, spending her money. You knew exactly what you were doing. Vanessa's face was red now too. I loved him. I still love him. You loved his potential access to $2 million. That's what you loved. That's not true. Really? Because in a text message to Kayla on March 20th, you wrote, Marcus says his wife is loaded. Like millions. Once they're divorced, we're set for life. Did you write that? Vanessa looked like she wanted to disappear. Maybe, but... No further questions, Patricia said, returning to her seat. Vanessa practically ran from the witness stand. She looked at Marcus as she passed, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Graham called 2 more witnesses, Marcus's brother, who testified about how unhappy Marcus had seemed during his marriage, and Marcus's college buddy, who made vague claims about Marcus being a good guy who made a mistake. Patricia dismantled both of them on cross-examination, pointing out that neither of them had spent significant time with Marcus and me as a couple, neither could provide specific examples of my alleged neglect, and both had clear bias toward their friend. By 4 o'clock, Graham rested his case. Judge Kerrigan looked at both attorneys. Closing arguments tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Then I'll take this under advisement. As we left the courtroom, Patricia looked pleased. That went even better than I expected. Marcus's testimony was a disaster. Vanessa's was worse. We're in good shape. But I couldn't shake the anxiety. It wasn't over yet. Tomorrow, both sides would make their final arguments, and then my fate would be in the hands of a judge who'd known me for all of 2 days. That night, I couldn't eat. I paced my house, Cooper following me from room to room with worried brown eyes. I kept replaying Marcus's testimony, Vanessa's lies, Graham Westfield's attempts to paint me as the villain. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, you're going to regret this. You'll end up alone with your precious money and no one who loves you. Hope it was worth it. Asterisk. Marcus or Vanessa? Maybe both. I screenshot it and sent it to Patricia, then blocked the number. The next morning came too quickly. I put on my best armor, a black suit that made me feel invincible, my favorite heels, makeup that hid the dark circles under my eyes. When I walked into that courtroom for what I hoped would be the last time, I held my head high. Today would end it, one way or another. The courtroom felt different that morning. The energy had shifted from spectator curiosity to something more anticipatory, like everyone knew something big was about to happen. They had no idea just how right they were. Judge Kerrigan entered, and we all stood. She settled into her seat and looked at both attorneys. Closing arguments, she said. Mr. Westfield, you may proceed. Graham Westfield stood and approached the bench. He was polished, professional, and he made his case with the kind of skill that came from years of courtroom experience. Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about 2 people who wanted different things from their marriage. Mrs. Walsh wanted a business partner, someone to stand beside her at corporate events and not interfere with her ambitions. Mr. Hayes wanted an actual marriage, a partnership based on love, communication, and mutual support. He made mistakes. He's admitted that. But those mistakes came after years of feeling neglected, undervalued, and emotionally abandoned. The prenuptial agreement in question was signed under pressure by a man who was financially dependent on his fiancée and had no real choice but to sign or lose the woman he loved. That agreement should be invalidated, and Mr. Hayes should receive an equitable share of marital assets that grew during their partnership, regardless of who earned the money. Because marriage isn't just about money, it's about partnership. And Mr. Hayes was a partner, even if his contributions can't be measured in dollars. He sat down. Several people in the gallery nodded. I felt my chest tighten. Patricia stood. She was calm, composed, and absolutely lethal. Your Honor, Mr. Westfield is correct about one thing. Marriage isn't just about money. It's about trust, fidelity, and honoring the commitments you make. Mr. Hayes violated every one of those principles. He didn't just have an affair, he conducted a months-long relationship with another woman while living in his wife's home, spending her money, and plotting to take millions of dollars he had no right to. He created a fraudulent company to steal from her business. He bought his mistress expensive gifts using money he'd invoiced fraudulently. He admitted under oath that he was planning to live off his wife's fortune. This isn't a case of a neglected husband seeking connection. This is a case of a calculating individual who saw an opportunity to profit from his marriage and took it. The prenuptial agreement in question was signed voluntarily by a man who had $18,000 in savings at the time. He was not financially dependent or under duress. It should stand as written. And Mr. Hayes should receive nothing beyond what he brought into this marriage, because he has earned nothing except the consequences of his own choices. She sat down. I exhaled slowly. Judge Kerrigan looked at both attorneys. I'll be honest with you both. This case has been complicated. There are strong arguments on both sides. Mrs. Walsh clearly prioritized her career in ways that may have damaged her marriage. But Mr. Hayes's behavior has been, frankly, appalling. The fraud, the affair, the calculated planning, all of that is deeply troubling. My heart was pounding. I couldn't tell which way she was leaning. The prenuptial agreement is particularly thorny. It wasn't notarized, which creates some validity questions, but it also wasn't signed under the kind of duress that would typically invalidate such a document. I'm going to need to take some time to review all the evidence carefully before I make my ruling. No. I needed this to be over. I needed a decision, a resolution, an end to this nightmare. However, Judge Kerrigan continued, before I do that, I want to address something that was raised in discovery. Mrs. Walsh, your attorney submitted some evidence related to the prenuptial agreement's execution. Is there something additional you'd like to present? Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor. If I may approach. You may. Patricia walked to the bench, carrying a manila envelope I'd never seen before. My heart rate kicked up another notch. What was this? She handed the envelope to the judge, then turned to face the courtroom. Your Honor, Mr. Hayes has made much of the fact that the prenuptial agreement wasn't notarized and that the witness wasn't impartial. He's argued that this invalidates the agreement. However, we have evidence that directly addresses Mr. Hayes's claims about signing under duress and not understanding what he was agreeing to. Graham Westfield stood. Your Honor, we weren't informed of any additional evidence. Because we just obtained it 3 days ago, Patricia said smoothly. And we've provided copies to opposing counsel as of yesterday morning, as required. Judge Kerrigan opened the envelope and pulled out several documents. She read them, her eyebrows rising slightly. Mr. Westfield, did you receive these? Graham looked at his paralegal, who nodded. We did, Your Honor, but we haven't had adequate time to review. These documents are fairly straightforward, the judge said. Mrs. Walsh, would you like to explain what we're looking at? Your Honor, those are emails between Mr. Hayes and his friend, Tyler Morrison, dated 2 weeks before our wedding. In them, Mr. Hayes discusses the prenuptial agreement extensively. He acknowledges understanding it completely. He even jokes about how smart it is to sign it because he's not in this for her money anyway. He specifically states that he has no problem with the prenup and that his friend Jake Brennan, the witness, is cool with signing off on whatever. These emails prove that Mr. Hayes understood exactly what he was signing, had time to review it, and signed it willingly and without any duress whatsoever. The courtroom exploded with whispers. Graham Westfield's face went white. But Marcus went from white to bright red, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Judge Kerrigan read through the emails carefully. Then she looked up at Marcus. Mr. Hayes, did you send these emails? Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. I don't remember. They came from your email address. They reference specific language from the prenuptial agreement. They're dated and time-stamped. Did you send them? I might have, but... So you did understand the prenup when you signed it? Yes, but... And you signed it voluntarily? Yes, but things change. People change. I didn't know what our marriage would be like. Mr. Hayes, the validity of a prenuptial agreement isn't determined by whether you later regret signing it. It's determined by whether you understood it and signed it voluntarily at the time of execution. Based on this evidence, it's clear you did both. Graham Westfield was frantically whispering to Marcus. Marcus was shaking his head, his face getting redder by the second. Judge Kerrigan set the documents down. I'm ready to rule. My breath caught. Patricia's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. I've heard all the evidence, reviewed all the documents, and considered both parties' arguments. Here's my decision. The prenuptial agreement is valid and will stand as written. Mr. Hayes understood what he was signing, had adequate opportunity to seek legal counsel, and signed it voluntarily. His later regret about that decision doesn't invalidate the agreement. Yes. Oh God, yes. But the judge wasn't done. Regarding marital assets, given that Mrs. Walsh can document that virtually all marital income came from her earnings, and given Mr. Hayes's documented fraud in creating false invoices, I'm ruling that Mr. Hayes is entitled to 50% of the joint bank account, which currently holds approximately $42,000, and nothing more. The house remains Mrs. Walsh's separate property, as does her business, her investment accounts, and all other assets she brought into the marriage or acquired during it. Marcus shot to his feet. That's not fair. I was married to her for 6 years. I supported her career. Mr. Hayes, sit down, Judge Kerrigan said sharply. You supported her career by attending events occasionally while she paid for literally everything else. That's not support, that's being a dependent. And frankly, your behavior throughout this marriage, the affair, the fraud, the calculated planning to take assets you hadn't earned, that behavior precludes any claim to equitable distribution. This is bullshit. Marcus shouted. Graham Westfield grabbed his arm. Marcus, stop. But Marcus wasn't stopping. He was spiraling, his carefully maintained composure completely shattered. You know what? He yelled, turning to face me. You want to know the truth? I never loved you. I saw an easy target, a lonely workaholic with money and no social life. I thought I'd marry you, wait a few years, and then divorce you and take half of everything. That was the plan from the beginning. The courtroom went completely silent. Judge Kerrigan's expression was ice. Mr. Hayes. And you know what the best part is? Marcus was laughing now, a wild, unhinged sound. At our divorce hearing, I'll finally live off her fortune. I'll get what I'm owed, one way or another. The crowd in the gallery actually laughed, not with him, but at him. Because he just admitted, in open court, that he'd married me with the intent to defraud me. That everything had been a lie from the beginning. And that's when I stood up. Patricia tried to stop me, but I pulled away from her. I walked toward the bench, my heels clicking on the marble floor, and I pulled out an envelope from my briefcase, my own envelope, one Patricia hadn't known about. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady and calm. If I may. Judge Kerrigan looked intrigued. Approach. I handed her the envelope and leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. Check the date on his signature, I whispered. The judge's eyes widened slightly. She opened the envelope and pulled out what was inside, a copy of our prenuptial agreement. But not just any copy. This was the original, the one from the safe deposit box. The one I'd pulled out last week when I'd been reviewing everything with Patricia. The one where, if you looked closely at the date Marcus had written next to his signature, you could see something interesting. He'd written the wrong year. The prenup was dated June 15, 2018, 2 weeks before our wedding. But Marcus, in his haste to sign and get it over with, had dated his signature June 15, 2017. A full year before we'd even gotten engaged. Which meant, technically, that the document he'd signed wasn't the actual prenuptial agreement that governed our marriage. It was a meaningless piece of paper with an impossible date. But here's the thing, I had the real prenup too. The one that had been properly executed, with the correct date, signed by both of us at the actual attorney meeting. That one was in Patricia's files, had been submitted to the court, and was completely valid. This misdated copy? This was from a different meeting, a practice run we'd done at my attorney's office a week early, where Marcus had signed a dummy copy so he could practice understanding it. He'd been so casual about it, so unconcerned, that he'd written the wrong year and hadn't even noticed. And I'd kept that copy. Because even then, some part of me had known to protect myself. Judge Kerrigan looked at the signature date, looked at Marcus, looked back at the document. Then she did something I'll never forget. She laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, genuine laugh that echoed through the courtroom. "Mr. Hayes," she said, still smiling. "You dated this prenuptial agreement a full year before you even met your wife. Either you're a time traveler, or you were so unconcerned with actually reading what you were signing that you couldn't even get the year right." Marcus's face went from red to ghost white. The crowd in the gallery erupted in laughter. Real laughter this time. People were actually pointing at Marcus, who stood there frozen, realizing that his grand moment of defiance had turned into public humiliation. "Your Honor," Graham Westfield said desperately, "that's clearly just a clerical error. It's evidence that your client didn't take this agreement seriously from the beginning," Judge Kerrigan said. "Just like all the other evidence shows, he never took this marriage seriously. My ruling stands. Mrs. Walsh, you're granted a divorce. Mr. Hayes gets $21,000 from the joint account and nothing else. The dog goes to Mrs. Walsh." She banged her gavel. "Court is adjourned." The courtroom cleared slowly. People filed out, still laughing, still talking about what they'd just witnessed. Several of them looked at me with expressions ranging from admiration to pity. I wasn't sure which made me more uncomfortable. Patricia was grinning from ear to ear. "The envelope. Adrienne, that was brilliant. Why didn't you tell me about that? I only found it last week." I wasn't sure it mattered until Marcus started shouting. It mattered. Oh, it mattered. Did you see his face? I had. I'd watched Marcus realize, in real time, that his plan to finally live off my fortune had not only failed spectacularly but had been turned into a punchline. That the crowd had laughed at him. That he'd publicly admitted to marrying me for money and would walk away with $21,000 and nothing else. $21,000. Less than I made in a good month. Graham Westfield was packing his briefcase with sharp, angry movements. Marcus stood beside him, still in shock, his face pale and his hands shaking. Vanessa had disappeared at some point during the chaos, probably realized that her meal ticket had just evaporated. As I gathered my things, Marcus turned and looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. "You planned this," he said, his voice hollow. "All of it. You knew exactly what you were doing." "Yes," I said simply. "I did." "You made me look like a fool." "No, Marcus. You made yourself look like a fool. I just provided the evidence. I loved you." That made me stop. I turned to face him fully. "No, you didn't. You loved my money. There's a difference. And now you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that you had a real partnership, a real relationship with someone who actually cared about you, and you destroyed it because you were too greedy and too arrogant to appreciate what you had. You weren't perfect either. You ignored me. You chose work over me every single time." "You're right," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't perfect. I did prioritize work. I made mistakes. But I never lied to you. I never cheated on you. I never plotted to steal from you. My mistakes were human. Yours were calculated. He didn't have an answer for that. Graham Westfield put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. We need to go. As they walked past me, Graham leaned in close. For what it's worth, Mrs. Walsh, that was the most impressive cross-examination defense I've seen in 20 years. You have a hell of a lawyer. I know, I said. Patricia and I walked out of the courthouse together. The late morning sun was too bright, the air too warm for October. I felt disconnected from my body, like I was watching someone else's life from a distance. What happens now? I asked. Now? You go home. You decompress. You start rebuilding your life without a lying, cheating husband draining your resources and your energy. What about Vanessa? The alienation of affection suit. She'll settle. They always do. She doesn't have the money to fight it, and she, let me continue from exactly there, doesn't want the public humiliation of a trial. I'd estimate she'll offer 20 to 30,000 to make it go away. I don't even care about the money, I said. I just wanted her to face consequences. She will. Trust me, being sued for alienation of affection isn't something you put on your Instagram influencer bio. Her reputation is going to take a hit. We reached Patricia's car. She turned to face me, her expression softening. How are you really doing? I thought about that question. How was I doing? My marriage was over. The man I'd thought I loved had admitted in open court that he'd never loved me back. I'd just spent 2 days having my entire life dissected in front of strangers. I was divorced, 37 years old, and starting over. I'm okay, I said, and realized I meant it. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm free. Patricia smiled. You are. And Adrienne? You're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary. I drove home alone, the courthouse getting smaller in my rearview mirror. When I pulled into my driveway, my house, my life that no one could take from me, Cooper was waiting at the door, tail wagging like I'd been gone for years instead of hours. I scooped him up, buried my face in his fur, and for the first time in months, I cried. Not sad tears. Exactly. Relief tears. Release tears. Tears that washed away 6 years of lies and left behind something clearer. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned off my phone. I ignored my email. I ordered pizza, not from anywhere fancy, just regular pizza, and I sat on my couch with Cooper and watched terrible reality TV until my brain stopped racing. The next few weeks were strange. I had to adjust to living alone again, to not having another person's schedule to consider, to making decisions that only affected me. At first, it felt lonely. Then it started feeling liberating. I threw myself back into work, but differently this time. I turned down a few clients whose demands would have consumed my life. I hired 2 new associates to help distribute the workload. I started leaving the office at 6 instead of 9. And slowly, I started to remember who I'd been before Marcus. The woman who'd built a business from nothing. The woman who took calculated risks and won more often than she lost. The woman who didn't need anyone to complete her because she was already whole. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from Dale Hutchinson. Thought you'd want to know, he said. Marcus and Vanessa broke up. I almost laughed. That lasted long. Apparently she'd expected him to walk away with millions. When he showed up with 21,000 and a lawsuit, she lost interest fast. He's living with his brother now. Working at a car dealership. I should have felt satisfaction at that news. Vindication. But mostly I just felt nothing. Marcus was no longer my problem. What he did with his life from here was his own concern. Thanks for letting me know, I said. One more thing, Dale added. Vanessa settled the alienation of affection suit. $15,000. Patricia said to tell you the check cleared. After we hung up, I sat at my desk and thought about that money. $15,000. It wouldn't change my life. I made that in a week. But it represented something important. Consequences. Accountability. The idea that you don't get to deliberately destroy someone's marriage without paying a price. I donated it all to a women's shelter that helped people escape abusive relationships. 6 months after the divorce, I sold the house. Too many memories, too many rooms that echoed with arguments and lies. I bought a smaller place downtown, a modern condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city I'd helped build through my work. Cooper loved the balcony. I started dating again. Tentatively. Nothing serious. I wasn't ready for serious. Just dinners with interesting people, conversations that didn't end in lies, connections that felt honest even if they were temporary. And you know what I learned? I learned that I didn't need someone else to validate my worth. I learned that my value wasn't determined by whether someone chose to appreciate it. I learned that success isn't just about money or business deals, it's about building a life you don't need to escape from. A year after the divorce, Monica and I closed the biggest deal of our careers, a mixed-use development in Uptown worth $32 million. We celebrated with champagne in the conference room, surrounded by our team, people who'd worked alongside me through the worst year of my life and had never once made me feel weak for falling apart. You know what the best part of this is? Monica said, raising her glass. You did this. Not we, you. You found this deal, you negotiated it, you brought it home. And you did it while going through hell in your personal life. You're a badass, Adrienne Walsh. I looked around that room, at the business I'd built, the team I'd assembled, the life I'd created entirely on my own terms, and I finally understood something important. Marcus had been right about one thing. I did choose my career over my marriage. But the marriage had been built on lies from the beginning. My career was built on skill, dedication, and honest work. Of course I chose the thing that was real. 2 years after the divorce, I ran into Marcus at a restaurant downtown. I was there with a client, a brilliant young couple opening their 3rd location and looking to expand into commercial real estate investment. We were celebrating their latest success, laughing over wine that I could actually taste this time, not just drink while my mind spiraled through worst-case scenarios. And then I saw him. He was at the bar, alone, nursing a beer and staring at his phone. He looked older. Tired. The charm that had once made rooms light up had dulled into something flat and ordinary. He saw me too. Our eyes met across the restaurant, and I watched him process my presence. The nice dress, the genuine smile, the laughter that wasn't forced. The fact that I looked happy. He looked away first. I turned back to my clients and continued our conversation without missing a beat. Because that's the thing about healing. Eventually, the people who hurt you become just another person in a crowded room. They lose their power over you. They become small. After my clients left, I paid the bill and walked toward the exit. I had to pass Marcus to get there. Part of me wanted to just walk by, to prove I didn't care enough to acknowledge him. But another part of me, the part that had spent 2 years in therapy working through anger and hurt and betrayal, wanted to say something. So I stopped. Marcus. He looked up, startled. Adrienne. Hi. Hi. Awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, he said, you look good. Thanks. I feel good. I heard about your big deal. The $32 million project. Congratulations. Thank you. More silence. He was gripping his beer bottle so tightly his knuckles were white. Listen, he said finally. I know it doesn't matter now, but I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserved better. I studied him for a long moment. He looked sincere. Genuinely remorseful. 2 years ago, that apology might have meant something. Might have given me closure or satisfaction or vindication. Now it was just words from someone I used to know. You're right, I said quietly. I did deserve better. And eventually, I gave it to myself. I walked away without looking back. Outside, the Charlotte night was warm and alive. People walked by in groups, laughing and talking. Cars hummed past on the street. Somewhere, music played from an open door. The city I'd helped build, in its small way, through my work. It felt like home in a way it never had when I'd been trying to build a life with someone who was only ever taking from me. I pulled out my phone and called Patricia. She'd become more than my attorney over the past 2 years. She'd become a friend. "You okay?" she answered. Patricia always knew when something was up. "I just saw Marcus." "Oh God. How was it?" "It was fine, actually. He apologized. I accepted it. And then I left." "That's very mature of you." "I'm not sure it's maturity," I said, smiling. "I think it's just indifference. He doesn't matter to me anymore." "Good. He shouldn't. You know what you should do tonight?" "What?" "Go home, pour yourself an obscenely expensive glass of wine, sit on that balcony with your dog, and appreciate the fact that you won. Not just the court case, everything. You won at life, Adrienne. You got free, you rebuilt, and you're thriving. That's the best revenge there is." She was right. I drove home, to my condo that I'd decorated exactly how I wanted, with art I loved and furniture that was comfortable rather than impressive. Cooper greeted me at the door with his usual enthusiasm, like I'd been gone for weeks instead of hours. I did exactly what Patricia suggested. I poured a glass of wine, a really good one, because I could afford it and because I'd earned it, and I sat on my balcony while the city lights twinkled below. And I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. The woman who'd found those text messages and felt her world shatter. The woman who'd lain awake at night terrified of losing everything she'd worked for. The woman who'd smiled through dinners with a man she couldn't trust, gathering evidence for a battle she'd never wanted to fight. That woman had been strong, but she hadn't known it yet. The woman I was now? She knew exactly how strong she was. She knew her worth. She knew that she didn't need anyone to complete her, because she'd always been complete. She just needed to remember that. If you're reading this story, or listening to it, or however you're experiencing it, and you're going through something similar, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. The betrayal hurts. The lies hurt. The feeling that you wasted years of your life on someone who didn't deserve them, that hurts most of all. But you will survive it. And if you do the work, if you face the pain instead of running from it, if you choose yourself over and over again even when it's hard, you won't just survive. You'll thrive. I never wanted to get divorced. I never wanted to spend 6 years with someone who was using me. I never wanted to stand in a courtroom and have my life dissected in front of strangers. But I did all those things. And I came out the other side as someone I actually liked being. Someone who didn't apologize for her success. Someone who understood that choosing herself wasn't selfish, it was survival. 3 years after my divorce, I'm running a business that's more successful than I ever dreamed. I have genuine friendships with people who love me for who I am, not what I can give them. I have a dog who thinks I'm perfect. I have a life that feels authentic in a way it never did when I was trying to be the person I thought a wife should be. And yes, I'm single. But I'm not lonely. There's a difference. Maybe someday I'll find someone who deserves the trust I'm capable of giving. Someone who sees my success as something to celebrate rather than something to exploit. Someone who wants to build something together instead of taking what I've already built. Or maybe I won't. And you know what? That's okay too. Because I learned something important from Marcus, from the divorce, from everything that happened. I don't need a partner to have a complete life. I don't need someone else to validate my choices or share my victories or make me feel whole. I was whole all along. The envelope I showed in that courtroom, the one with Marcus's incorrectly dated signature, wasn't what won my case. The evidence Patricia gathered, the witnesses who testified, the fraudulent invoices and hotel receipts and emails that proved Marcus's intentions, those were what won. But that envelope represented something important. It represented the fact that I'd been protecting myself, even when I didn't fully realize I needed protection. Some part of me had always known to keep that copy, to save that evidence, to prepare for the possibility that someone might try to take what I'd built. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. When someone asks you to ignore red flags in the name of love, pay attention to those flags. When you find yourself making excuses for someone else's behavior, ask yourself why they can't behave better in the first place. I ignored so many signs with Marcus. The way he never seemed excited about my successes. The way he always needed just a little more money. The way he talked about my work like it was an annoyance instead of an achievement. The way he made me feel guilty for being ambitious. I'll never ignore those signs again. As I sat on my balcony that night, Cooper's head resting on my lap, the city spread out below me like a promise of everything still to come, I realized something. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not the performance of happiness I'd maintained during my marriage. Not the I'm fine happiness I'd forced after the divorce. Real happiness. The kind that comes from building a life you don't need to escape from. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. The kind that comes from choosing yourself over and over again, even when everyone else tells you that's selfish. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see it. Your success is not something to be ashamed of or minimized to make others comfortable. Your ambition is not a character flaw that needs to be fixed. And if someone tries to take what you've built, tries to claim credit for your work, tries to diminish your accomplishments or steal your resources, fight back. Gather your evidence. Build your case. And destroy them with the truth. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't making them suffer. It's building a life so good that you forget they ever mattered in the first place. 2 years after that encounter at the restaurant, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Marcus had moved to another city. Started over somewhere new, where people didn't know about his very public humiliation in a Charlotte courtroom. I hoped, genuinely, that he learned something from what happened. That he became a better person. That he found a way to build something honest instead of trying to steal what others had built. But whether he did or didn't, it wasn't my concern anymore. My concern was the presentation I had the next morning. The new client who'd specifically requested to work with me. The team I was building. The life I was living. I finished my wine and went inside. Tomorrow was another day. Another opportunity. Another chance to build something worth protecting. And this time, I knew exactly how strong I was. This time, I was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for reading. At our divorce hearing, my husband boasted he'd live off my fortune. Then the judge saw my envelope. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are stronger than you know, worth more than you realize, and capable of rebuilding anything that gets torn down. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see it.